My name is Layla Hart. I'm 29 years old, and I'm sitting in a courtroom watching my husband, Grant Whitmore, smile like the ending is already written. He taps his pen, leans back in his chair, and signs our divorce papers with a little laugh, like this is a harmless formality before he goes back to his real life. Grant glances at me and whispers to his lawyer, loud enough for me to hear. After this, she'll go back to whatever little town she crawled out of. His lawyer smirks. Probably. Grant's eyes meet mine for half a second. Pure satisfaction, like he's enjoying the humiliation. 6 years ago, I would have dissolved right there. Today, I sit very still, because the judge hasn't read my financial statement yet, and Grant Whitmore has no idea who he married. I grew up in Cedar Ridge, the kind of town where the diner waitress calls you baby, no matter how old you are. My dad fixed engines, my mom ran a thrift store. We weren't poor like TV poor. We were real-life poor, the kind where you learn early that money doesn't care about your feelings. My father had one rule. If you don't have it, don't pretend you do. That rule kept me alive. So when I got accepted into a business program in Harbor Point, I left Cedar Ridge with a suitcase, a scholarship, and a single promise to myself. I would never depend on anyone who could afford to abandon me. That promise didn't stop me from falling for Grant. I met him in a cafe across from campus. I was hunched over accounting notes, chewing the cap of a pen because I didn't have time for cute, only survival. He slid into the chair like he owned it. "You're studying accounting?" he asked, looking at my books like they were something sticky. "Yes," he smiled. "Smart, but not ambitious." I blinked. "Accounting isn't ambitious?" He leaned closer, voice low like we were sharing a secret. "Ambition is law, power, influence. Accounting is support." I should have stood up. Instead, I laughed, because he was handsome and confident and speaking like a man who had never been told no in his life. He offered to buy my coffee. I said yes. That was the first trade I made without knowing the price. Grant didn't court me like a normal man. He constructed an experience. Dinner at places I couldn't pronounce. Gifts with receipts I was too afraid to ask about. Weekend trips to Silver Bay where everything smelled like money and sunscreen. The first time I said, "This is too much," he kissed my forehead like I was adorable. "It's not too much," he said. "It's what you deserve. You just haven't lived like this before." I heard love. What he said was ownership. When he introduced me to his world, I realized fast, Grant wasn't dating me to be with me. He was dating me to prove something. His friends were polished. Their girlfriends were the kind of women who looked expensive even in sweatpants. Grant's family held events, not dinners. They talked about people like they were business mergers. At one gathering, his mother, Vivian Whitmore, smiled at me without warmth. "So you're from Cedar Ridge," she said, like the words tasted odd. "Yes, ma'am." She tilted her head. "How quaint." Grant always did have an interest in contrast. Grant squeezed my hand under the table, hard. Not comfort. A warning. Later that night, he said casually, "You should soften your accent around my parents. It's not bad, it's just noticeable." My throat tightened. "It's my voice." He laughed like I'd made a joke. "Layla, I'm helping you." He always framed control as help. That's how the cage gets built without you noticing the bars. We got married in Driftwood Cove because I begged for something intimate. Grant agreed like he was allowing me one last harmless preference. On our wedding night, he looked at me in the mirror while I pinned my hair up. "You clean up well," he said. I turned, expecting something sweet. He added, "Now we just have to keep you that way." I laughed nervously. He didn't. We moved into a house in Ashford Heights, a neighborhood so quiet it felt staged. Everything was white, gray, and expensive. Grant liked it that way. I tried to add color, photos, plants. Grant removed a framed picture of my parents from the hallway and placed it inside a cabinet. "It cheapens the aesthetic," he said. I stared at him. "It's my family." He looked genuinely confused. "And put it in your office." "I don't have an office." He kissed my temple. "Exactly. The first year of marriage wasn't one big explosion. It was death by paper cuts." Grant criticized everything, but softly, like a man training a dog, not hurting a wife. "When I bought a dress from a normal store," he said, "you don't have to shop like that anymore." When I laughed too loud at dinner, he said, "You're not in Cedar Ridge." When I talked about my job, he called it your little numbers thing. Then came the money control. We had joint accounts, but he monitored every swipe. "What's this?" he asked one night, holding up his phone. $86 at a bookstore. It was for professional certifications. He blinked slowly. "You can learn everything online for free. Why are you wasting money?" The next week, he bought a watch worth more than my monthly salary. When I stared, he said, "It's an investment." When I pushed back, he smiled. "Layla, you don't understand money the way I do." I was an accountant, but he said it with such confidence that I almost believed him. The first time I said I wanted a baby, Grant didn't get angry. He got cold. We were in bed, lights off. I whispered it like a prayer. He exhaled. "A baby?" "Yes." He rolled onto his side. "Not yet." "When?" "Later." "Grant, we've been married 2 years." He finally looked at me, eyes flat. "And you still haven't elevated." My stomach dropped. "Elevated? You're still in that same job, same mindset, same smallness." He said it like a diagnosis. "A child with my last name needs more." I felt heat rise in my face. "More from who?" He held my gaze. "From you." I didn't cry in front of him. I waited until he fell asleep, then walked into the bathroom and sat on the cold tile floor so my sobs wouldn't echo. That night I grieved something I couldn't name. Not the baby. Myself. Then, in year 4, he started coming home late. At first it was client dinners, then trial prep, then networking. His phone stayed face down. His smiles happened away from me. One night he came home with perfume on his shirt. I asked, "Quiet? What is that smell?" He didn't even look guilty. He looked annoyed that I noticed. "It's from hugging people," he said. "Stop being dramatic." The next day, I saw a text on his lock screen. "Miss you already. No name. Just a single letter. S." My hands went cold. Grant walked in, saw my face, and smiled like he could read my thoughts. "Don't start," he said. I didn't. Not yet. Because something inside me didn't break. It clicked. A switch flipping from "please love me" to "watch me leave." Back in the courtroom, Grant is still smiling. The judge adjusts her glasses and says, "We'll begin by reviewing financial disclosures." Grant doesn't even sit up. He thinks he's watching my funeral. He has no idea he's about to attend his own. The week after I saw that message, I didn't confront Grant. I studied him. I watched him like an auditor watches a liar. He stopped kissing me goodbye. He stopped asking about my day. He started treating our marriage like a lease he'd already decided not to renew, and still he kept controlling the money, the optics, the story. One night, he checked our card statements at the kitchen island like he was reviewing evidence. "You spent $42 at a cafe," he said. "It was lunch." He raised an eyebrow. "Lunch is at home." I stared. "I work downtown, and you could pack a lunch." His tone was gentle, like he was teaching a child. Little habits add up. Then he went to the closet and pulled out a shopping bag. He placed it on the counter like a trophy. Inside was a designer suit. I didn't ask the price. I didn't need to. He smoothed the fabric. "This is for a partner's event." I forced my voice steady. "How much?" He smiled. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Try to understand my world through numbers. My world is about perception." So my life became the performance of being his wife, while I quietly began building the only thing that would save me, my exit. I opened a bank account in a different part of town, not near our neighborhood, not near his office, not anywhere he'd ever drive. I set up a small direct deposit from my paycheck, not enough to trigger his attention, just enough to give me oxygen. When the teller asked, "Would you like paper statements mailed to your home?" I smiled politely. No. That was the first lie I told for my survival. I started taking online certifications at night. Quietly, Grant would be out networking, and I'd be at the dining table with spreadsheets and earbuds, learning investment strategy, consulting frameworks, business formation. If Grant came home early, I slammed the laptop shut and pretended to be watching a show. Once he walked behind me and noticed the book on the table. "Advanced Financial Modeling." He scoffed. "What's that?" "Work." He laughed. "Layla, don't overdo it. You're not competing with anyone." He said it like a joke, but it sounded like a warning. Then I did something that terrified me. I registered an LLC, Heart and Soul Financial, not under my married name, not under our address. I did it through a mail service and a virtual office. I paid cash for the first setup fees. I wasn't trying to hide because I was guilty. I was hiding because I was married to a man who believed my ambition was disrespect. My first client happened because the universe has a sense of timing. I was at the same cafe where I met Grant years later, older, quieter. A woman at the next table was arguing with her business partner. "We're bleeding money," she said. "I don't know where it's going," her partner groaned. "We need a consultant," she snapped. Consultants charge like they're curing disease. I turned before I could stop myself. "I'm not expensive," I said. They both stared. My heart hammered. "I'm Layla. I'm an accountant. If you want, I can take a look." The woman narrowed her eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because I need proof that I'm not who my husband says I am." But I didn't say that. Instead, I said, because I'm good. She studied me like she was deciding whether to gamble. Finally, fine. I'm Naya Park. I run a boutique packaging company. We met that weekend. I walked into Naya's office and saw chaos. Receipts, vendor contracts, unpaid invoices. Naya rubbed her temples. If you can fix this, I'll owe you my life. I sat down, opened my laptop, and said quietly, no, you'll owe yourself your life back. Naya blinked. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time. Maybe not to me either. I found the leak. Bad payment terms, unnecessary subscriptions, vendor fees they weren't negotiating. Within 2 weeks, I reorganized her cash flow. Within 1 month, she had profit. Naya stared at the new numbers like she was looking at a miracle. How? She whispered. I swallowed. Because numbers don't lie. People do. Naya leaned back and said something that hit me like a hand on my shoulder. You're not just good, you're dangerous. I almost cried, because Grant used to say I was harmless. Referrals followed. Small businesses, startups. People who needed strategy, not judgment. I worked at night. I took calls from my car. I whispered into my sleeve like I was committing a crime. And every time a client paid me, I didn't feel rich. I felt free. At home, Grant noticed changes in me, but misunderstood them. He thought my new calm was surrender. He mistook silence for defeat. One night, he tossed me a box. Inside, expensive earrings. Wear these to the Whitmore Gala, he said. I held them like they were poison. Why, I asked. He shrugged. Because people will look, and I don't want them thinking I married down. I stared at him for a long moment. Then I smiled, sweet and empty. Of course. I went to the gala. I smiled, I played the role, and I listened. Rich people talk when they think you're furniture. I learned which firms were under audit, which partners were in trouble, which investors were quietly hunting for the next big thing. Grant loved showing me off. He didn't realize he was handing me intel. Then the betrayal finally showed its face. A receipt fell out of his jacket. I picked it up. A bracelet. $12,000. Not for me. For Sloan. My throat went tight. I didn't scream. I didn't break. I folded the receipt and placed it back where it belonged. Then I sat at my desk and did the thing Grant never expected. I planned. I didn't intend to catch them in our bedroom. It just happened. I came home early because a client canceled. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard laughter, a woman's laugh, in my house. My feet moved before my mind caught up. The bedroom door was half open, and there he was, Grant, shirt undone, standing too close to Sloan Pierce, his coworker, her hands on his chest like she belonged there. Grant turned, saw me, and his face didn't show guilt. It showed irritation, like I'd walked in during a meeting. Layla, he said sharply, you're supposed to be at work. I looked at them, then at him. I live here, I said. Sloan covered her mouth, eyes wide. Oh my God, Grant didn't even step away from her. He straightened his tie slowly and said the words that killed the last part of me that still hoped. Well, this saves us a long conversation. I blinked. What? He exhaled, almost relieved. I want a divorce. Sloan's eyes flicked to him, then to me. Grant continued, calm, confident. Sloan and I are building a future. I stared at him, waiting for the part where he said sorry. It never came. Instead, he said, I'll be fair. I'll give you enough to get on your feet. I laughed once. It came out bitter. Get on my feet, I repeated. He smiled like I was being dramatic. Layla, you're not equipped for my world without me. Sloan's voice was small. Grant, he ignored her. You can take your personal belongings, he said, and I'll give you a settlement, a clean exit. I stepped into the room fully, and for the first time in years, I stood tall. No, I said. Grant's smile faltered. No? I'm not leaving, I said. You are. His jaw tightened. You don't get to decide that. I nodded toward Sloan. Then take her and go decide it somewhere else. Sloan's face went pale. Grant stared at me like I'd spoken in a foreign language. Then his mouth curled. You think you have leverage? He said quietly. Layla, you don't. He leaned closer, voice low and cruel. By the time my lawyers finish, you'll be lucky to rent a studio above a laundromat. Something in me went calm. Not brave, not angry, just finished. Okay, I said softly. Grant blinked. That's it? I looked at him. That's it. Because I wasn't reacting, I was recording. Every threat, every cruelty, every arrogance. Grant grabbed Sloan's hand and walked out like he owned the hallway. At the door, he turned back. You'll regret being stubborn, he said. I smiled. No, I whispered, barely audible. You will. The next day, his lawyer sent an offer, a check, a deadline, a warning. It was designed to scare me, to rush me, to make me sign before I understood the numbers. Grant thought I was still the girl he edited. So I did the most dangerous thing a woman like me can do. I hired a better attorney. Her name was Rosa Delgado. She read the offer, then looked at me. "They're trying to rob you," she said. I swallowed. "What do I do?" Rosa smiled without humor. "We make them regret underestimating you." Grant launched a smear campaign. Friends stopped calling. Neighbors stopped smiling. One woman at the mailbox said, too casually, "I heard you had some instability." I stared at her. "Who told you that?" She avoided my eyes. "Grant's concerned about you." Grant wasn't concerned. Grant was controlling the narrative. He wanted the world to believe I was the problem so no one would question him. And for the first time I understood, this divorce wasn't just paperwork. It was war. Grant assumed I'd fold. He assumed I'd panic when legal letters arrived. He didn't know the truth. I wasn't funding my defense with fear. I was funding it with my business. While he delayed disclosures, Rosa and I built our case. Grant forgot accounts, misplaced statements, accidentally undervalued assets. Rosa documented everything. Then she asked me the question that changed the strategy. "Layla," she said, "do you have anything he doesn't know about?" My heart pounded. I held her gaze. Yes. Rosa didn't react like she was impressed. She reacted like she was relieved. "Good," she said. "Then we choose the moment." In the middle of negotiations, Grant showed up at the house unannounced. He walked in like he still had keys to my life. He looked around and scoffed. "You're really going to fight me?" he asked. I stayed calm. "I'm going to be treated fairly." He laughed. "Fairly? Layla, fairness isn't for people without power." I looked at him. "Then I'll use mine." His eyes narrowed. "What power?" I smiled slightly. "You'll see." His face darkened. "You're playing a game you don't understand," he snapped. "And you're going to lose." He leaned in close, voice poisonous. "I made you." I stared at him, and grief rose in my chest. Grief for every time I believed that. Then I said the sentence that stopped him. "No," I whispered. "You limited me. I built me." Grant froze, then recovered with a sneer. "We'll see what the judge says." He turned and left. And for the first time, I realized something. Grant wasn't just afraid of losing money. He was afraid of the world seeing that I was never small. He just kept me that way. Rosa found the prenup clause, the one written to protect Grant's future ventures. It said, "Any business created during marriage without investment from the other spouse remains separate property." Grant's own lawyers wrote it to protect him. They never imagined it would protect me. Rosa tapped the page. "This," she said, "is where he dies." The court date arrived. Grant walked in smirking. Sloane sat behind him like a trophy that didn't realize she was temporary. Grant signed papers with a flourish. Then he whispered as he passed me, "Enjoy crawling back to Cedar Ridge." I didn't respond. Because the judge was about to read my disclosures. And Grant was about to learn what it feels like to be powerless. Judge Maren Caldwell adjusted her glasses and said, "We will review both parties' disclosures." Grant looked relaxed. He still thought this was about me begging for scraps. Rosa stood. "Your Honor, before you proceed, we request the court review evidence of Mr. Whitmore's non-disclosure." Grant's lawyer objected. Judge Caldwell cut him off. Denied. "Continue." Rosa laid it out calmly. Hidden accounts, undervalued investments, spending on Sloane with marital funds. Grant's smile faded. His jaw tightened. Then Rosa said, "And now, Your Honor, we submit Mrs. Hart's complete financial disclosure." The clerk handed the judge the envelope. Grant leaned back again, trying to recover his confidence. Then the judge opened it. She read silently. Her eyebrows lifted, just slightly. Then she began. "For the record, I will summarize Mrs. Hart's disclosed assets." Grant's eyes flicked to me, irritated. Then the judge read, "Hart & Co., financial valuation based on contracts and revenue, $2.1 million. Grant sat up fast, his mouth opened slightly. The judge continued, "Investment portfolio, diversified holdings, $11.9 million. Grant's face strained. His lawyer leaned toward him, whispering urgently. Grant didn't move. He looked like someone had removed gravity from the room. Then, real estate holdings, 2 properties, total value $1.2 million. Judge Caldwell looked up. Total disclosed assets, $15.2 million. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like punishment. Grant stared at me like I was a stranger wearing my face. His throat bobbed as he swallowed. Sloane stood up slowly in the gallery, eyes wide, then sat back down like her legs didn't work. Judge Caldwell turned to Grant. Mr. Whitmore, she said, voice firm, do you wish to revise your earlier statements about Mrs. Hart's financial dependence? Grant's lips parted. No sound came out. His lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, we were unaware. Judge Caldwell raised a hand. That is not Mrs. Hart's responsibility. Rosa spoke like a blade. Your Honor, we direct the court to Clause 18 of the prenuptial agreement. She slid the prenup forward. Judge Caldwell read, nodded once. The language is clear, she said. Mrs. Hart's business is separate property. Grant made a sound, half protest, half panic. No, he started. Judge Caldwell cut him off. And given Mr. Whitmore's failure to disclose assets, she added, the court will consider that deception in the division of marital property. Grant's lawyer tried again. Judge Caldwell's stare hardened. You don't get to hide money and then ask for fairness, she ruled. My business stayed mine. My investment stayed mine. My property stayed mine. And because Grant lied, the marital assets division favored me. The house would be sold. Proceed split heavily toward me. Grant stood abruptly, face twisted. This is ridiculous, he hissed. Rosa didn't flinch. Judge Caldwell said calmly, sit down, Mr. Whitmore, before you make this worse. Grant sat. Sloane walked out of the courtroom without looking back, and I realized something in that moment. She wasn't the love of his life. She was just the next woman he thought he could control. Outside the courtroom, Grant rushed toward me, eyes wild. You planned this, he snapped. You waited. You trapped me. I looked at him, really looked. A man who mistook cruelty for strength. A man who thought love was ownership. A man who believed women are only valuable when they're obedient. No, I said evenly. I survived you. Grant's face tightened. I made you. I stepped closer, voice low and steady. No, Grant. I held his gaze. You tried to erase me. I let the words land, and you failed. Then I turned and walked away. Not rushed, not shaking, not emotional. Because my win wasn't money. My win was this. He couldn't reach me anymore, and he never would again. The end. Subscribe to my channel for more heart-touching stories.